We will have Phil Steele on here next Thursday, everyone. So please be on alert for that conversation with Phil Steele. And leads me to this final note here. Steve was reviewing the Phil Steele magazine, has an article posted. So as it relates to the Buckeyes, Steve, your thoughts about what Phil Steele has?
Yeah, very interesting analysis, I thought, by Phil Steele, and good by Tony to have it handy dandy right there. On his power poll, which is where he tells you this is the ranking of the strength of these teams, he has Ohio State at number 5. And you'd say, well, that's not in the playoff. But just scroll back a couple of pages, and in his real top 40, he has Ohio State number 3, and you scratch your head. Why is that? Well, it's because Ohio State's schedule is about as bad as it could possibly be. Among the playoff contenders, I mean, you look at those West crossover games with Minnesota, Nebraska, and whoever the other one is that's escaping my mind right now, and nobody can even think of it. It's that bad. I don't even know. Purdue, Illinois.
Purdue.
Do they play Purdue this year? Do they really play Purdue?
It's a revenge game, Steve.
Purdue,
Get
right?
with it.
They play Purdue on November 13th. Oh, my God. Any rate, so that's why he's got Ohio State at number 3 in his top 40. He sees them making the playoff because they're going to dominate the schedule that they're playing. His top 5 is interesting of his power poll. I'll flip back to it if I can find it here. Let's see. The power poll. He has the most accurate preseason magazine of the last 23 years. Just ask him based on his own way of ranking the teams. Yeah, his top 40, Oklahoma is number 1, Alabama number 2, Ohio State 3, and Clemson 4. So if you go by that, Oklahoma and Clemson would play in one of the semifinal games, and Alabama and Ohio State would play in the other. And Georgia at number 5 would be probably the next team left out. Figure, they would lose to Alabama in the conference championship game. His power poll, he actually has Alabama number 1, Oklahoma 2, Clemson 3, and Georgia 4. So he's basically admitting Georgia's better than Ohio State, but because Georgia's going to lose a game and Ohio State probably won't, Georgia will be the one on the outside looking in. And again, this is all, you have to take all this with a grain of salt. I mean, Oklahoma number 1, I mean, Spencer Rattler is his presumed pick to win the Heisman Trophy. He's going to put up some huge numbers. And if they can improve themselves defensively with the guy who was a cast off from OSU a couple years ago, then so be it. But I don't know.
Put up big numbers. Their defense sucks.
Yeah, better put up 70. It's really funny. One of my best friends, who's a coach, a high school coach, saw a tweet from the Big 12 commissioner that some big things are in the offing for the Big 12 conference, and without even batting an eye, he quote tweeted and said, "Maybe some defense?" ?
Yeah, big scores. 70-68. I mean,
maybe some defense. Whatever. So.
Oklahoma's schedule is pretty bad too. They're off non-conferences: Tulane, Western Carolina, and Nebraska, and they go to the end of the season before they play Iowa State and Oklahoma State. So, when you have to probably beat Iowa State twice in order to win the conference, or I guess only have to beat them once. You just have to beat them in the championship game, and that's pretty much all you do. You never have to go to Austin. I mean, you never have to play your biggest rival on the road. So that's a pretty soft schedule too. Their road games are Tulane, Kansas State, Kansas, Baylor, Oklahoma State. You never know what Oklahoma State's going to get, but I think Oklahoma's in the playoffs this year. I agree.
Do you know
they'll lose to K-State again. They stub their toe all the time. For whatever reason, they just sit there and they think that they can cruise control through one of those games, and 409-year-old Bill Snyder will come out in his rascal and will whip their candy butts. I mean, no.
Do you know what's crazy is some Texas fan got into my Twitter mentions here about something I posted or about the recruiting rankings and how they're going to lose this again or whatever, and the Ohio State fans just savaged the guy. And here's the thing. I know that Tom Herman is not the coach there at Texas anymore, but for the life of me, without looking it up, I have no idea who the head coach at Texas is. Like, they've gone through 7 coaches in 12 years. I have no idea. Who is the new
You
coach?
should be familiar with his offensive style, Steve.
I can't. No clue.
He
No
was the
clue.
Alabama
Ed Warner.
offensive coordinator last year.
Oh, Sarkisian?
Yes.
Oh, for God's sake. Didn't USC try that? I mean, come on, man. What the
Washington.
heck?
Well, I was going to say, he'll have some guys, but I mean, they'll be about akin to the Alabama, low second team. And that's not, Bijan Robinson is a national type of player, but he's not going to have the type of toys there that he had at Alabama to control and move around the chessboard. So it's not going to be an immediate type of thing. And yeah, you're right. I mean, we've seen this. It's going to take a situation of where he's going to need Joe Burrow and Joe Brady, the way that they were able to bring back Ed Orgeron's career for 1 year, and then you take both of them away, and now it's a middling proposition. I'm not bullish on Sark working out in Austin.
Well, and here's the other thing. If Ohio State even sniffs around a kid in Texas, he comes to Ohio State now. And let's see, this kid, I asked Bill Kurlick, who's our recruiting guy last night, who's the next guy to commit to Ohio State? And he gave me 2 names, McClellan, a defensive tackle, I think, from Oklahoma.
Wassa, or Proctor.
And then the other kid is this kid from Humboldt, Texas, an offensive lineman, Cam Dewberry, who's number 101 in the composite. And again, that's what triggered in my mind. Why isn't Texas recruiting this kid? How are all these kids from Texas and Oklahoma in that footprint leaving that footprint and playing at Ohio State? And they're getting 3 guys a year out of Texas now. And not only that, they're getting like the best 3 guys out of Texas. It's like they go in there and just get whoever they want. And like, who's the coach at Texas? I mean, is there a coach at Texas A&M?
It's not Sarkisian.
At TCU, they don't need the top guys. You
guys realize when you leave these comments, I got to clean all this up. I'm going to get.
I mean, who's the coach at Texas? Who is it? I don't even know who it is.
Sarkisian.
SMU just got a 5-star guy this week.
I mean,
and they just picked up another big guy too. But Oklahoma is at least getting theirs. I mean, I think that Oklahoma recruiting and Texas recruiting are a little bit different.
Different things. Yeah.
Oklahoma is getting theirs. Texas, I think there's still kind of a wait and see thing. Credit to the Horns. They went out. They don't get Quinn Ewers. They get Malik Murphy. I think Malik Murphy is going to be a pretty good fit. And it's been a minute since Texas has been able to trot out a quarterback that I think that fits what it is that I think they're going to want to do. They've been able to go in and they have beat Ohio State in some head-to-heads there. Dewberry grew up as an Ohio State fan while living in the Houston suburbs down there in Humble. I like Ohio State's chances there, but you just don't know in that instance. And then McClellan, I certainly think Ohio State does land McClellan. He was a little bit of a late riser. Oklahoma State both got involved, but I think that the Buckeyes have just kind of maintained through there. And that's one of the advantages you have recruiting out of state, because you can offer and not have a kid immediately jump on it. It's why people sometimes freak out that why Ohio State hasn't gotten involved with this Ohio kid or that Ohio kid. If they offer and the kid says, all right, I'm in, and Ohio State can't say, oh, no, we're not ready for you, because not only does that screw things up with that kid, but it does with that community, that high school, and potentially more. So sometimes you are a little hamstrung when it comes to recruiting your own footprint for that reason, and why somebody like Ohio State can go in there and just apparently take whoever it wants.
Well, I'm 53 years old, and I can't remember. I've known people 20 years. They'll come up to me on the street. I can't remember their name. I'm having really tough times with memory and whatever, and I'm hanging in. I'm doing the best I can with it. I think what I need to do is write down Steve Sarkisian's name on my wrist, and then that way it's there when Ohio State beats them for another. I mean, Quinn Ewers. Now, obviously, that was a Tom Herman production more than Steve Sarkisian, but I probably need to write his name down on my on my wrist. That way I can remember who it is, because I'm never going to remember that, because that's not a guy I would associate. Geez, retread? Texas needs a freaking retread? Come on, man. Come on. I don't. You got to do somebody in the Texas coach, somebody who worked for Mac Brown somewhere along the way that was there when they won it all, has got to be able to resurrect that thing or something. Good God. Texas. Ugh.
Well, of course, all the talk was they were shooting for Urban Meyer. So they went from Urban Meyer to a 60% winning
USC
percentage.
had who since Pete Carroll? I mean, you're seeing these gigantic, huge name brand programs. It's one of those things that when you fall off the merry-go-round, it's hard to get back on. And, SC has fallen off the merry-go-round. Texas has fallen off the merry-go-round. Michigan has fallen off the merry-go-round.
They're not even at the amusement park. They're not even at the county fair anymore.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, seeing the situation of where Urban Meyer literally hands the PlayStation controller to Ryan Day, that's the best case scenario there. I mean, granted, we've seen situations of where Butch Davis handed the PS1 controller to Larry Coker, and that didn't go so well.
We just picked up all sorts of folks, so they must have heard you guys howling even through the internet somewhere, through the Ethernet. I don't know what the deal is, but about 150 on the line. So thanks for joining us for Ohio State football talk. But for many of you, you missed most of it, so please wait for the video to post. Should take about 15 minutes. Also consider what I'm pointing at down below even Tony there. PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. And if you enjoy this particular show, put Ohio State, Buckeyes, whatever you want to put on there. Hell Wagon, whatever you want to put on there. Make note of that, because we want to keep this going. I can't speak for these three because they probably want to be let go at any time. But for this guy, I want to keep this going for as long as possible. And one of the best ways to do that, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, Mark Rogers TV, notate for the Ohio State show or for whatever you want to give toward.